I found a recording from a government quarantine site. They said it was Ebola, but it was something else. This recording serves as entry 3792 in the Operation Roundup archives. The following recording was retrieved from Redacted and features Redacted. Account of Field Incident 72. Any unauthorized replication or release of any entries from these archives will result in espionage charges with a punishment up to and including execution. Hello? Testing. Testing. Damn, I hope this thing is working. My name is Name Redacted. And I live at Location Redacted. If you find this message, please find my parents and tell them that no matter what the news says, I didn't die from Ebola. I woke up this morning at 6 a.m. It sounded like there was a construction crew at the building next door. The non-stop humming of power drills and the backup alarm of construction vehicles became overwhelming. Since I couldn't sleep, I grabbed breakfast and headed for a quick shower. Couldn't have been gone for more than 20 minutes. By the time I got back to my bedroom to put on some clothes, there was a weird shadow outside of my window. I walked closer to open the blinds to see what it was. My heart skipped a beat when I saw a man in a bucket lift wearing a military uniform and respirator. He was placing sheet metal over my window. We made eye contact, but he didn't acknowledge me. "What the hell are you doing, man?" I screamed at him. "Uncover my window, you freak show." The sound of a high-powered drill fastening the metal to the brick outside drowned me out. With my window covered, I was in the pitch dark, so I turned on my lamp and picked up my phone. I tried to call my building superintendent, but the line was busy. Since I couldn't get a hold of him, I decided to head downstairs to his office to ask what the construction crew was doing. Superintendent Watkins usually posted notices if anyone would be working on the complex, so I had been worried that no one had notified him. After I put on some clothes, I walked to my front door. I could hear people talking loudly in the hallway. When I went outside, almost everyone on my floor was milling around in the hall and talking in worried tones. "Did the board up your windows too?" the old man from across the hall asked. I was eating breakfast when some damn fool started covering my windows with something. Acted like he didn't even see me. I told him the same thing had just happened in my apartment. There were other conversations of the same nature happening all around us. No one seemed to know why it was happening, so I zigzagged through the crowded hall and made my way down the staircase to go talk to the super. When I reached the landing to the lobby, the lights were so dim I couldn't see 5 feet in front of me. All of the picture windows were covered with what I assumed was the same metal that covered our apartment windows. Thin beams of sunshine penetrated the cracks and cast razor-thin lines of light on the tile floor. The only thing in the lobby I could see clearly was a dim light above the building entrance. The door looked like it had been replaced with one of those submarine doors. A bulkhead, I think. I was pulling my cell phone out of my pocket to use the flashlight app when a blinding circle of light filled my vision. My hands darted in front of my eyes to block it out, but it was still overwhelming. It startled me so much that I nearly fell over. "Go back upstairs, sir," a voice called from the dark. "This building is under quarantine due to an Ebola outbreak. Return to your home until the lockdown has ended." "What the hell are you talking about?" I asked, pulse racing. "Ebola? You've got to be full of." "Return to your home now, sir," boomed the voice. "Failure to comply with this directive will result in the use of lethal force. You have 5 seconds to depart." 5, 4, 3. I ran back up the stairs in full panic. As I stumbled up the steps, I pulled my shirt over my mouth as a makeshift mask. The man downstairs said someone in the building was sick with Ebola, and I knew there was a forest of people right upstairs. Before I rounded the top of the landing, I began to scream to the people upstairs. "Go back to your apartments!" I yelled. "There is a man downstairs that said we are until quarantine lockdown. Someone here has Ebola. Get the hell away from each other." By the time I reached the second floor, people were already scattering back to their apartments like cockroaches. I waited at the top of the stairs until the hallways cleared and ran to my apartment. Once I was inside, I immediately jumped in the shower again. I know it was all in my head, but I felt like there were millions of things crawling on my skin and no water was hot enough to make me feel clean. After my second shower, I redressed and grabbed my cell phone before settling onto the couch. First, I tried to call a few people in the building that I knew, but the lines were all busy. Calls to my parents and sister ended with the same result. Eventually, I called emergency services and to my surprise, the line started ringing. "Hello, 911, the operator said. "What is your emergency?" "Yes, ma'am. I live at redacted. And some agency has sealed our building shut." When I went down, the line went dead. I tried to call back a few times, but there was always a busy signal. After a few minutes, I decided to grab my laptop and try to reach someone online, but there was no internet signal. All I could do was cry. I curled up on the couch with my knees to my chest, afraid I had some fatal illness and would never see my friends or family again. My mind raced with potential methods of escape when suddenly I heard screams from down the hall. I walked quietly to my door and opened it. There was no one in the hallway. I could still hear a man screaming from down the hall. The sounds of crashing furniture and scraping on the walls drifted down to the open crack in my door. Then I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. A man in black military fatigues and a respirator held some kind of gun to his chest and held his hand to his ear. "Control, this is Sergeant. Redacted. The subject appears to be in apartment 101. Requesting permission to engage." Silence. Understood. Engaging now. The soldier tried to turn the knob, but the door was locked. He leveled his rifle at the latch and fired 2 quick bursts before kicking the door inward. A guttural roar poured out from the room as the soldier began to fire. I knew I should have gone back inside, but I couldn't look away. The man stood in the hallway raining bullets into the open apartment. Howls of pain and anger erupted. Something flew out of the door and hit the soldier in the face. It looked like an arm. The source of the blow made him stagger backward and he slid down the wall, still firing into the room. He tapped at his ear before ejecting the magazine from his rifle and slapping a new one into place. I could see him squeezing the trigger, but there was only a dry click. "Come in, Control. Target engaged." I've emptied an entire magazine into the thing but nothing. A thin, scaled arm shot from the doorway and grabbed the soldier's ankle. The soldier pulled a knife from his belt and began slashing at the clawed hand. Another bellowing roar erupted as the knife failed to pierce through the shining skin. Another clawed hand grabbed his other ankle and dragged him into the apartment. I slammed my door and leaned against it as I hyperventilated. Even with the door shut, I could hear the man scream for help before a terrible ripping sound and terrifying silence. I started shoving every piece of furniture in the living room I could move against the door. Even slid the dresser from my bedroom and added it to the pile. It wasn't a moment too soon. Just as I slumped onto the ground from the sudden exertion of energy, I could hear a scratching noise as something scampered in the hallway. Without warning, something began to throw its weight against my door. The furniture rattled and I braced myself against the barrier to add as much stability as I could. Growling mingled with the sound of claws digging into the wood of my door. Whatever it wasn't making progress in the apartment. And then it fell quiet. No more scratching or grunting. It's been an hour since the thing tried to make its way into my apartment. I'm still sitting against the pile of furniture in case it comes back. My body weight probably won't be the difference in keeping it out, but why take the chance? I've heard it breaking down the doors of the other apartments on my floor. I can hear someone screaming right now. I want to help them, but there's nothing I can do. At least I'm safe here. Whatever that thing was, it couldn't get in. I wish my neighbors were as lucky. Anyway, if I don't make it out. Shit, there is something moving through the heating ducts. I think. Muffled screams and indistinguishable audio. This recording was recovered by Recon Team Bravo. The entity from Field Incident 72 remains unaccounted for. More fatalities are expected. Containment of the aforementioned entity is listed as red level priority. End entry. My father-in-law is in prison for trying to kill me. Now I know he was trying to be kind. 1 year ago, my father-in-law tried to murder me. He planned it beautifully, the trip up to the cabin in the woods that his family owned. Pushing me into the dried-up old well. Pickpocketed my phone. Left a gun within the well that gave me the option of killing myself instead of starving to death, his twisted version of mercy, I guess. Either way, he would have got away with it. He hadn't accounted for the lost dog though. Hadn't thought that a couple would come looking for a beloved pet who had raced off after a deer. That they would find me, half dead from starvation and dehydration, holding the gun, contemplating it seriously after nearly 3 days in the well, fully aware that I was going to die of thirst before starvation. There had been no rain for days. When I woke up in hospital, my wife Samantha was by my side holding my hand, her beautiful face wet with tears. Despite my own physical pain, all I wanted to do was make her stop crying. So I softly took her hand and with great effort raised it to my lips and give it a gentle kiss. "I was so worried about you. What happened to you?" she begged me, green eyes bright with tears. The nurse came in and took my vitals, then told my wife that she should leave me to sleep some more. I was glad for the rescue because I knew once I revealed what had really happened to me, my wife's heart would break permanently. Her father had always been her favorite person. I met Samantha at work 3 years ago. She was the marketing executive where I was a software developer. We were both in our late 20s and I knew within 10 minutes of our first conversation that I was going to marry her. She was bright, funny, clever, and it didn't hurt that she was absolutely gorgeous with bright green eyes and long red hair. 4 months into dating her, she met my family. I come from a massive family where both my parents had 4 siblings each and then went on to have 5 kids together too. Our Sunday lunches are loud, raucous events at my folks' place with at least 20 people in attendance, but Sam was utterly charmed by my family. And my parents and siblings adored her. She fit right in like the missing piece of a jigsaw puzzle. Everything was going so well until Sam decided it was time for me to meet her only family member, her father. Cameron Joyce was a tall, burly man who dressed and looked like a lumberjack. He lived in a neighborhood at the very edge of the suburbs, close to a big, wide forest. When he stiffly shook my hand, his blue eyes ice cold, a sort of chill ran through me. After we walked into the 2-bedroom house behind him, the first red flag should have been that there were no photos of Sam's mother. Not one. In fact, if I truly thought about it, Sam never really spoke about her mother. I should have asked more questions about her, but I guess I always just assumed that the subject was too painful for her. The first time I thought her father was trying to kill me was a fleeting thought which happened that visit. I distinctly heard Sam tell her father over the phone multiple times that I had a nut allergy, but when we sat down to eat, I started to feel my throat swell up. Sam's father watched me cough, slowly chewing his food. Of course we had an EpiPen on us, but if we hadn't, I could be dead right now. Then it was the time right after our wedding when he knew I couldn't swim, but I am 90% sure he pushed me into the lake when the 3 of us were on the docks looking at his boat. The 3rd time was the charm though. If those hikers hadn't found me, I'm sure I would have died down in that well. You might be wondering why I chose to go to that cabin with a man I thought was trying to kill me. Because I really didn't think he was trying to kill me. My brain insisted that I had misread or misheard the situation, and both those incidents could have been accidents. Also, Sam was keen her father and her husband. And I just couldn't break her heart. I'll never forget the ride to go the cabin. My father-in-law was a man of few words. So when he decided to tell me a story, I almost sighed with relief that I didn't have to keep talking to fill the dead air between us. He kept his eyes on the road and said there was once a boy who lived a happy life with his family in the forest. It was him, his 3 brothers, his parents, his grandparents, his uncles and aunts and all his cousins. He didn't know much about the world beyond his family home, but he had 1,000 things to do in the woods, so he never wondered. For a time, all was well, and as it should be, the boy and his family lived off the land, hunted and thrived. Until one day on his 19th birthday, the boy saw the woman in white in the gut of the trees. Ethereal and shimmering, she glowed like a white will-o'-the-wisp. When he asked his mother about her, she told him to stay away from the woman. That nothing good comes out of the woods on a sickle moon night. We were close to the cabin now, and as we approached it, a strange sort of feeling was beginning to crawl up my spine. A sense of something being wrong gripping me tightly. The boy listened to his mother. 2 days he did not go looking for the woman. On the 3rd night, he found himself outside the house walking into the woods. As he drew closer, he saw the woman's face. Her gold hair shimmered all the way to her knees. Ice blue eyes and a lovely face that glowed with the promise of a forever his mortal brain didn't understand. The woman offered him her hand. Entranced, he reached out and took it. He parked and turned off the engine of the car, but still wouldn't look at me. Instead, he stared ahead into the depth of the forest as he told me this eerie tale. The minute he took that hand, the thing claimed him. They found him a year later at the top of a mountain living in a cave, naked and insane, speaking a strange tongue in a language which had to be made up. What was terrifying was that both his legs from his knees downwards were gone. And yet, the wounds had been cauterized and someone or something had clearly been feeding him. His parents brought him home and tried to help him recover his mind. The doctors fitted him with prosthetic legs he kept hidden away. But the boy was never really the same again. When he began to slowly speak again, he spoke of a woman with a skull instead of a face, a long, skeletal crone's body, fangs instead of teeth, clumps of white hair that fell out of her head and milk-white eyes of the eyes of a corpse. And then, finally, the ear-piercing scream. He fell silent then and my skin crawling. I asked him what happened to him. My father-in-law broke out of his trance and looked at me, his expression unreadable. Let me show you how to hunt. The trial was short. My father-in-law was caught in possession of my phone and several other items that suggested what he planned to do. His internet search history revealed extensive ways to murder someone. When they put Cameron Joyce in prison, my wife cried herself to sleep every night for a month. I think she blamed me for what happened even though she would never say those words. I would catch her looking out from our apartment in the direction of the forest which we could see clearly. She grew more and more forgetful, wouldn't go to work, would sleep all day. Some days she wouldn't even brush her hair. Her face grew more haggard and sometimes when I saw her naked form in bed in the moonlight, I could swear I saw her ribs through her translucent skin. Her sadness was going to devour her. And there was nothing I could do about it. One day I came home and she wasn't there. I looked for her everywhere. I don't know how I knew it, but somehow I knew she would be at the cabin. I jumped into my car and sped there at full speed, not caring how many fines I would have to pay. I got there just before dark and I caught sight of her. She was naked, her back to me facing the forest. Sam. I called her name as I got out of the car. She didn't turn to look at me. Instead she stood there, her messy red hair lifted by the breeze. I called to her again, a deep sense of unease in my bones. Sam. Slowly, she turned to face me. And that was when I saw her face. A skull. A distended jaw that opened much, much too wide. That was when she let out an ear-piercing scream. A sharp pain burst through my head and I immediately clapped my hands over my ears. I tried screaming my wife's name again, but all I could hear was the shriek that was starting to feel like someone was knifing my brain. My vision swam and I stumbled backward. A dozen figures had appeared from the woods. All of them with skull-like faces, impossibly distended jaws and the same milk-white eyes that had replaced my wife's bright green ones. And they were all walking towards me. I didn't even think. I got into my car and started the engine, my ears bleeding from the sound of the scream. I ran. 2 days later I am couch surfing at a friend's after the doctors had dealt with one perforated eardrum. They told me I was lucky both my eardrums hadn't burst from the volume I was listening to music at. I had just nodded and let them get on with it. There was a ringing in my ears I couldn't quite get rid of no matter how I tried. There was no way I could explain what had happened in those woods to them. I am waiting for the ringing and the headache to stop before I go looking for Sam again. This time I will take a gun. I'll find her and bring her home. I've already spoken to the police, but I know they just aren't as motivated to find her as me. My phone rings and I gingerly held it to my good ear. It's a collect call from the prison. I accept it because who else could possibly give me answers? It happened, didn't it? My father-in-law's gruff voice made me nearly drop the phone. I swallowed hard. Sam's gone. I said numbly. She's gone back where she belongs. He said. You're lucky. How am I lucky? I asked, bitter anger surging through me. She was my wife and your daughter. That thing was no daughter nor a wife. It knows how to mimic being human. Why do you think I told you that story? His voice was low and even. My jaw dropped. Was he really suggesting he was the boy from the dark fairy tale he has told? You're cruel. Disowning your daughter, trying to kill me. You should listen to me, boy, and listen good. That creature was dropped at my doorstep a few months after I came home from the forest. It was an infant then, and it butchered my parents. I found pieces of them around their cabin for years. It then proceeded to kill everyone related to me. But it wouldn't let me die or kill me, and I couldn't figure out why until I realized it needed me the way a parasite needs its host. Finally, when everyone I loved was dead and buried, it needed more prey. And it found you. It will take pieces of you, then keep you alive to take pieces of everyone you love. It will feed on your pain as you live through your own horror show. I swallowed hard. He had lost his damned mind surely. What on earth was he trying to say? If I were you, I would take all my belongings and leave. Leave the state. Hell, leave the country. Don't ever look back, you hear me? Ever. With a sharp click, he hung up. I wish I had listened to him. I wish I hadn't decided that I needed to rescue my wife at any cost. Instead, I am sitting here in the dark inside the old cabin looking outside the window, my fingers folded around the hunting rifle. A sickle moon gleams silver, the only light in the jet-black night. And there inside the darkness, I think I see a figure shimmer. From a distance, she almost looks like my wife. Almost. Until her inhuman skeletal jaw distends. And she screams. There is a rule in my hometown that you should never acknowledge an unwanted passenger in your car. I come from a quaint little town in Ireland that most tourists would regard as picturesque. We get our fair share of tourists throughout the year as they love to wander the walking trails that crisscross the outskirts. From the outside, our town would be regarded as perfect, but we hide a dark secret that only the inhabitants know about. I learned about the secret during my first driving lesson with my mother. I was beyond stressed that morning as my mother is a perfectionist and I didn't want to disappoint her. We started off slowly as she taught me to drive down the narrow roadways. My hands had a vice-like grip on the steering wheel as I was paranoid that I was going to make a mistake. I kept glancing at my mother out of the corner of my eye to judge her reaction to my driving. We were driving almost a half hour when I looked into the rearview mirror and spotted the smiling man sitting in the back seat. I was so shocked that I almost spun the steering wheel and crashed into the ditch. My mother screamed at me to keep driving, and whatever I do, don't turn around. My eyes were fixated on the mirror as I stared at the man who had suddenly appeared in our back seat. His face was somehow clouded in shadow, even though it was a beautiful sunny day outside. The only features of his face that I could make out were his eyes, which were a sickly green. His mouth was twisted into a snarling smile that made me want to jump out of the car. I watched in horror as he started reaching forward with his long, spindly arms towards me. I was paying so much attention to him that I had taken my feet off the gas pedal and we were slowing down. My mother slapped me across the face and yelled at me to drive faster. I sped up and watched in relief as his arms slowly withdrew back towards his body. He leaned his head forward and opened his mouth, and a plethora of voices began pleading for help. I instinctively covered my ears with my hands, which forced my mother to grab the steering wheel. It took me a few seconds to regain my composure and I grabbed the steering wheel. My entire body was on edge as the cries coming from his mouth reached a deafening crescendo. In the blink of an eye, the smiling man vanished, leaving me and my mother alone in the car. I pulled the car off to the side of the road and proceeded to vomit out my breakfast. The local police officer drove by and stopped to see what was wrong. He gave me a nod of approval as my mother explained that we had an extra guest in our back seat. We drove home in silence and I tried to venture the subject with her on a number of occasions, but she refused to talk about it. I learned from a few other people that he has been appearing in cars for almost 70 years. No one knows anything about him, but they all warned me to never turn to face him. I moved away to college a few months afterwards and over time forgot about the smiling man. I started dating a guy named Mike that I met in my history class. We were both a bit shy, so Noon knew that we were actually a couple. It started getting serious with Mike, so I decided to bring him home to meet my mother. I was a bit nervous about how she would react to him. We were just driving into the town when I spotted the smiling man once again sitting in my back seat. The blood drained from my face as we locked eyes in the mirror. Mike suddenly jumped in his seat as he must have noticed the smiling man. I shouted at him not to turn around, but it was already too late. The smiling man's grin widened as Mike turned in his chair to look at him. There was a blinding flash that caused me to jam on the brakes. I was suddenly drenched in blood and body parts as Mike's body exploded. I climbed out of the car and on the road weeping as Mike's body flowed out of the car and pooled on the ground. I was discovered by the same officer who tried his best to comfort me. It took me almost 2 weeks to get myself cleaned up as I kept finding pieces of Mike in my hair. I went back to college almost 3 months later and felt my heart drop as I spotted posters hanging everywhere with Mike's face plastered all over them. A woman saw me looking at them and asked me for help locating her missing son. I excused myself and practically ran away. I didn't have the heart to tell her that her son is buried in a small field in the middle of nowhere. I am now living with an abusive husband who beats me on a daily basis. I have managed to convince him to travel to my hometown with me, and I hope that I will get an opportunity to introduce him to the smiling man during our visit.